Let's talk about Oregon's quarterback, Bo Nix. We're past our big three of this quarterback class. So if you want to see Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, whoever's in your big three, go back, check out those videos. We've moved on. We're on Oregon's quarterback, Bo Nix, today. Derek, tell me a little bit about Bo Nix.
Yeah, Bo Nix is, I think seems like to a lot of people the next guy up in terms of like if you're going to pick out a quarterback 5. Some people like Penix if you really want the deep ball stuff, but it seems like Bo Nix is kind of a little bit the safer option, just in terms of, I said this on the audio podcast, but to me, Bo Nix is almost like a high floor guy where just because of the athletic ability that I think he has, where you can use him as a design runner, his accuracy to every level of the field, like you can see on his success by route tree, he doesn't have a bad route. There are a couple where he only is in the average range, but okay, if that's your worst ball, then that's pretty good. And then generally he's the guy who doesn't put the ball in harm's way all that much, which I think is a nice trait to have. So he to me just feels like a guy who can step in and not completely ruin things. Like I think his quick game operation is really, really good. I mean, you even see it here. Flat route is in the green, slant route is in the green. Curl is only in the average range, but I think that's perfectly fine. Especially considering he threw a lot of them in this Oregon offense. Like they just threw a lot of hitch routes. So I think generally he is, I think he checks a lot of boxes in terms of like the floor type of stuff. With Nix, I think it just gets interesting when you look at his ceiling. And I think a lot of that is kind of going back to, they just kind of didn't ask him to do a lot. I mean, you see here on his route percentage thing, 15.2% of his attempts are screens. That is a lot, my friends. That's a lot. It's not on the screen here, but almost 30% of his passes were behind the screen in general, whether that was, swing routes, checkdowns, just other stuff like that. Just a lot of routes behind the line of scrimmage. That's why you see here, he didn't throw any route like at an above average rate other than obviously screens or the curl routes. Like they just threw a bunch of hitch routes in this offense. Almost everything else was either done at an average or below average rate. That kind of a little bit tells you how much they were letting him really be like a big time passer, which to me, I think if you're going to be like a top 10 pick or even really any type of first round pick, your offense should very clearly tell me that you are a first round quarterback, if that makes sense. Like just the operation of it didn't quite feel that way to me with Bo Nix. So all right, so we're going to start off with we'll be nice to Bo Nix off the start. I mentioned earlier, I think he's really, really good in quick game operation. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I think he has a really quick and clean, consistent release, which I think is always going to help you in the quick game. It's why, to the opposite point, you see Justin Fields really struggle throwing in the 1 to 10 yard area because everything he does takes forever. Whereas I think Nix, he's kind of in the opposite tree where everything happens so fast for him. And I think that really helps him get the ball out cleanly when fractions of a second really can help you a lot in quick game. And then I think he's just an accurate thrower in quick game generally. So what you're going to see here is like they're going to run kind of what looks like a BS like fake screen basically, but the point man in this trips bunch down to the bottom of the screen is going to end up kind of just leaking into like almost a slant route here. What you're going to see from Nix is just you're going to see that quick and clean release right here, which I just think that's so smooth the way that he can get the ball out there just really quickly. And then I think I really like the ball placement here because Nix knows this route running into this area. He doesn't want to throw his man into traffic, so he kind of leaves it on the back shoulder, which it looks like a bad pass, and I think he probably did it a little bit too far back to the inside shoulder. But I think generally having the idea to not run his guy into this other defender is actually pretty heads up, and I think that's really what you want to see from a lot of quick game operation. He's not anywhere close to CJ Stroud, but this is obviously, I think, something you see when you watch CJ Stroud is that in the quick game, he really does a good job of understanding where the ball needs to be to protect his players. I think Nix did a really, really good job in this example. So that's, I think, some of the stuff you see from him a lot in quick game operation.
That's an interesting point, too, because some of the knocks that I've heard on Bo Nix and his profile is that he doesn't lead his wide receivers enough into like yak situations or open yardage. And I do think you see that a little bit where he likes to pin it on guys, whether how open they are or how much room is in front of him. But in this case, that's not something you would want to do. And at the NFL level, a lot of times you really do have to protect those wide receivers. So it's super important to be able to do that. All right, well, ignore the ugly college football formations here. Break down this play to me today.
Yeah, so this is where I think you see a lot of the creativity out of Bo Nix. I think every now and then you see this flash of like, oh, like he really can like just go make a play out of nothing. And I think you see some of just the explosive movement. You see the quick release that I said that he has. You see some of the accuracy from weird platforms, which I do think he has at times. And I think this play is just a great example of it. They're going to motion that guy in a little bit. You see here, Nix wants to just throw this flat route off of the run action. You got three dudes who are trying to go get a hand up in it. That's obviously not going to happen. He kind of resets, makes his quick shuffle, knows that his only other option, obviously when you're moving away at this weird angle like this, you're never going to go back to the flat route. It is completely closed. He slides up, goes back to the only route that even has a shot and just grips it and rips it, prays that his guy's going to be there. And he is. And again, I think this to me is some of those flashes that you get with Nix, where he does have the ability to go do something creative. I think generally his aversion to pressure in the pocket is kind of scary, but every now and then he gives you this flash where it's like, man, if we could get more of that, we could be kind of cooking here.
And if there's anything I couldn't knock Nix looking at his profile, his stats, his red zone success rate was really good. He was 73.9% in the red zone. You see that here. He is not really afraid to make these throws there. He's really good at putting him accuracy within the 20. I love to see that from a prospect like Bo Nix, but there are definitely still some concerns looking forward.
All right. I talked earlier in the show about how I don't always trust Bo Nix's arm talent outside of the numbers when he's really trying to push it. You're especially going to see that here from the college hashes that are a lot wider. So when he's throwing from the far hash, trying to get it to the opposite numbers, really need a lot of juice. And I think sometimes he just doesn't have it. And so what you're going to see here is the receiver to the top of the screen is going to run like a 12-yard stop route, something like that. Nix throws it with fairly decent timing. He just doesn't really have the juice, the snap out of his throwing motion to get it there. Like he's throwing here, this is on time. Like the guy's about to come out of the break, ball is just about to be out. I think that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly acceptable. It just kind of takes a while to get there. Like I think you would, if you're thinking about this to me like a top 7, top 8 NFL quarterback, a guy with like serious arm talent, a Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray, something like this, those dudes, when they're throwing like this, they can go pin it on him on his outside shoulder, no problem. That's floating a little bit. That's taking some time. And I think in the NFL, you're especially going to see those windows close even faster than they do in this example.
This type of clip from a college prospect to me just lights up a pick six flag. Like it just lights up in my head. You always see it with rookie quarterbacks. They come in, they think they have more time than they do on these hitch breaks or curl routes, and you'll see him lofted up there, and the cornerback bites and takes it to the house. It happens all the time to rookie quarterbacks, and it's like this just seems like a glaring concern when you're looking at it. Not a death sentence by any means, but with the amount that they ran these hitch routes in Oregon's offense, you want to see him just pin it to the chest of this guy when he makes that break.
Definitely. And I think that's the biggest issue we have with Nix. And I've talked about a little bit on the audio show. I think his velocity between the numbers is really not that bad. But for whatever reason, when he's got to really spin it outside the numbers, really push it, really drive it, it's just not all the way there.
Let's pull up this last clip we have on Bo Nix. You have one more concern you want to talk through before we finish out his profile.
Yeah, I mean, and you just kind of saw the clip run here. So they're just going to have double slants to the top of the screen here. I think he makes the right throw. I mean, he's going to go, you can just go 1 to 2 in this, on this concept. It's very, very simple. And I think going to the outside slant is completely fine. Completely fine choice. He like kind of starts to be okay with his timing, but I think what you're going to see here, so the defense kind of loads up with 5. It looks like it's going to be a pressure look. I think when the linebacker there starts to creep up, and obviously this end is going to drop out, but I think when this guy fires, Nix starts to feel hot, and when he feels hot, he falls away from throws. And that's what you're going to see here is he's going to get to the top of his drop, kind of stop here, and instead of like really being firm on his front foot and being ready to just boom, get into the throw, get into throwing one of these routes, you see him actually just completely fall away from it and let his front foot just completely get loose, swings the whole door open. And it's just really hard to keep a consistent like throwing platform and throwing base and like release point when you're doing that stuff, when you're just completely letting your body swing away from your throwing arm. And then you're going to see him just completely miss the throw, put it behind. I actually don't think as an idea, it's the worst thing to put this ball on the back shoulder when the DB like is kind of just ready to come pounce here. But I think he just leaves it way too far inside, way too far outside of the receiver. I just don't think that this is a good throw. And I think a lot of it goes back to, like I said, when he feels pressure, he starts to fade back a little bit. And I think you see, even though he doesn't actually get pressured, he just has that like habit of making throws like this. And I think you see him run into it here.
By far, my biggest concern with Nix is exactly this, is that under pressure, I don't know if he will, but under pressure, the worry is that he will revert back to the quarterback we saw at Auburn, which was jumpy, nervous, not good at standing under pressure. We saw this so much less at Oregon, but it was so much better of an offensive line. He was rarely ever pressured. And here, even when he was at Oregon, he only saw a 51-ish% success rate in your charting against pressure, which isn't a great mark for how little he was pressured in the class. The only other quarterback we saw similar to that was Jaden Daniels, who has a really great offensive line at LSU, and he saw like a 66% success rate when he was pressured. You should be able to stand in a pocket like that if you're not getting clobbered all day like he was behind this Oregon offensive line. He's pretty much safe. I worry that he'll revert back to that. The offensive line play in the NFL is a lot harder. You do get pressured, especially if you're drafted to a team with a poor offensive line, which usually is where we see these quarterbacks end up. Easily my biggest concern at his profile.
100%. And there were really so many examples I could have pulled for this. I do think it's his probably his scariest trait. But yeah, I thought this was just a great example because it, one, shows his aversion to pressure, but also two, just sometimes his footwork can get out of whack because of that. And again, for a guy who's like we both said, not pressured that often and also has played for 5 seasons, you'd like it to be a little bit more put together.
All right, put in your GM hat for me a little bit here. There's been a lot of rumors that he would be going to the Broncos. When we asked people on Twitter where he thought his best fit was, it was Denver. I have my concerns with him being the 12th overall pick. I believe you do too. But where would you want to see him go? And what are your kind of issues with him being drafted that high?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, in terms of drafting him that high, it's really hard to see a top 10 quarterback with Bo Nix because I don't think his arm is as good as anyone in the top 10 except for maybe Joe Burrow. And I think Joe Burrow just obviously does so many things as a processor that kind of alleviate that, whereas I just don't think that that's the case with Bo Nix right now. I think he's more of like a high floor, decent backup spot starter with a 5 to 10% chance to become something real, which to me, that makes him more of like a second or third round pick. If Denver was able to get him there, I would actually be really happy with that. I think that would make a lot of sense. I think there's a couple other spots if San Francisco really wants to get a backup that has like a similar-ish skill set, I think that makes a lot of sense. I said on the audio show, Miami, I think if they want a contingency plan who, does a lot of RPOs, very accurate, that sort of deal, could kind of make a lot of sense. So those are probably my landing spots for him right now.
I love it. The only one I want to throw out there is Seattle. I think he would fit very well in that run first kind of play action offense that they'll have there. Be able to sit behind Geno if they don't think he's the long-term answer. Similar situation though, where he gets to kind of sit and walk into an offense where he's going to see a lot of play action, a lot of RPO stuff. If you like this show, go check out Derek's profile on receptionperception.com. He does these for every quarterback we're doing in the draft. If you want to see a little more in-depth look at these quarterbacks, check out the audio show. It's a little bit longer than these, has a little bit more of the data and info from us. And if you want to see these coming out in the future, we'll be doing them every week up until the draft, along with Matt doing a lot of wide receiver stuff as well. So subscribe to the channel, turn those notifications on. We'll see y'all next week.